Jem, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Pleasure to have you. I'll start with saying that I came across Jem through Instagram, and you have got quite an active social media presence on there, and some fantastic photos. And from my point of view, what I love is just seeing how other people train and what other people are doing. So, first question from me is, how how did you get into triathlon? When did it happen? And what was sort of the journey?
Wow, so that's quite a big kind of question for me. It was a definitely not the standard way in. I hear a lot of I was a swimmer, I was a runner. You don't hear a lot of I was a classical ballerina, which is what I was.
Wow.
So I actually trained rather intensely in classical ballet. I took it up at the age of 4. And by sort of 9 or 10, I was training for 15 plus hours a week, and it just kind of escalated from there. I was involved with some pretty high level dance companies and sort of full-time schools as well in my teenage years. And by 19, I actually had gone professional as a classical ballerina with the lofty goals of being on the international stage and heading off to New York to join the New York City Ballet. But sadly, I'd actually experienced some pretty difficult health problems, and I'd been very, very unwell, really, really quite severely. And it really, when you come through something like that, which I was very fortunate and did, it gave you a very different perspective.
Yeah.
And I had got myself to kind of elite level, and I was aspiring to be pretty high level in dancing, but I realized that that kind of career path was not giving me the kind of full life that I wanted to kind of explore. I felt very lucky that I had been given the opportunity to get through that illness and things like that, and ballet wasn't enabling me to kind of experience things, and it held me back in some ways. So I literally didn't know what to do with myself. I'd been all I was going to do was be a dancer since the age of 4, and at 19 that being taken away, you have a lot of years ahead of you. So what do you do when you don't know what to do? You flick through a university manual, choose a course because, hey, psychology looks interesting, let's try that. I headed off to university still kind of clueless. The one thing's for sure, like once you have the mindset of an athlete, and I was, dancers, some people don't think they're an athlete, but when you train, I've prospected training 40 plus hours a week, I call you an athlete.
Of course.
But when you have that mindset, it doesn't kind of go away. So I was definitely on the lookout for another sport to really like drive that passion and energy towards. And I thought it was going to be running. I was built a little bit more like a runner, but they were a little bit like ballerinas. It's the mindset. It was a little bit of a crossover. And then I found out that my cousin was doing an Ironman, and I was like, wow, this is so cool what she's doing. And I literally thought she was a legend. Like, how could a human race for like, I think she achieved like 11 or 12 hours, which is
wow.
a good time. But like, I was like, how can a human do that? And that kind of, it really kind of intrigued me. I was very, very interested in the kind of performance mindset. I'd always been very interested in that. And I was like, this is just pure mental strength, being able to do that. And that really excited me. The challenge was incredible. And so I was at Bath University, and there's a very good triathlon team there. I got myself involved. Yeah, absolutely. I literally didn't have a bike. I had like a girly purple mountain bike that I was using for commuting. And I had a phobia of water. So
you picked the right sport there.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So I'm terrified to the point that, so the Bath Uni pool is 50 meters long, and I was so terrified the first time I went in there. I wore a wetsuit because I was like, oh, I have buoyancy. Like, I was properly petrified. As a kid, I wasn't even allowed to swim in school swimming because I used to have like this hysterical like breakdowns. Like, I'm just terrified of water.
Yeah.
And in a sense, I had come from a place where I was built like a ballerina. I was bloody kind of good at what I did, and I was kind of at the top of my game in my day. Towards the end, when I moved out, things have kind of changed, but in my day I was, top of my game. And I was coming now where I knew nothing, and like I'd literally been for like 5 runs in my life and didn't have a bike, couldn't swim, and I was like, this is a challenge, this is life-changing challenge, and it's something where I can channel that drive into. Maybe I didn't see it that clearly at the time, but now in reflection I do. And it was just like lit up a fire inside of me. And so I joined like the amateur uni tri club, and made friends with a pro triathlete who kind of coached me a little bit through the beginning, still sort of sorting out a few health issues here and there. And my first race, well, that was rather funny. That's probably a story for another time, but I walked the swim. My first open water start, and many of us can relate to, was hell. I managed to walk the swim though, because it was so shallow, so that was a plus.
Where was the first race? Where was the first race?
It was a tiny one, like a little one in West Midlands somewhere, like a Phoenix Triathlon. It was like tiny weeny sprint triathlon, hardest thing of my life. But kind of I went from that, and then a couple of weeks later, and probably another question in there, but I managed to overcome that kind of water fear through a little bit of self-induced fear training. And by the end of kind of the summertime, I picked up triathlon kind of April, and by the September I joined into the they had like a performance or development triathlon squad that was working a little bit with Vicky Holland's coach. So Vicky Holland became the ITU World Champion, so the short course triathlon world champion. And there was like a development pathway for a British Triathlon club, and so 6 months kind of in, I'd joined that and started hanging off the back of every ride and like killing myself at every swim, and sort of it all developed very fast, and kind of moving on again, kind of about 15 months in, I managed to take a silver medal at the European Championships in middle distance. And then it was like, okay, this game's getting a little bit more real.
It's really interesting that you talk about, obviously you were at a very high level with your ballerina and dancing element of it. And do you believe then triathlon came about because you were looking for that gap to be plugged? You were looking for something else to take or to channel your energy into?
Yeah, I guess so. I think like I'm a firm believer in like the body can do anything, it's the mind that stops you. And I think, I think so much of sport and so much of anything, whether it's music or whether it's dancing or whether it's like a traditional sport or whatever, I think so much of it is driven by you and your determination and what you want out of it. And it doesn't mean you're necessarily quicker, but like people that can achieve these extraordinary things, you see these people doing these ultra marathons and whatever, they're just normal guys that have set, or normal girls that have just set their mind or set their heart on something and have really channeled that energy. And yeah, absolutely. And I think there is something super special about triathlon, that a lot of people, I mean, my story is quite an odd one in many ways, but I think a lot of people, that's kind of technicalities of the story, but many people will be able to relate to a difficult time kind of in their life, and then finding this sport. And I think that's something super duper special about it, and I think that's driven by the need to kind of like, people do have to push themselves to new lengths.
And it's interesting that you say about looking for that next thing and then pushing yourself as well. So listeners of the podcast will know I come from a football and rugby background, and I hit my early 30s and I just found I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do that sudden change in direction, and maybe it's because I'm an amateur athlete. When you play rugby and football, you don't train properly, really. You don't look after your body. You don't you don't fuel properly, you don't recover properly. Anyway, so long story short, I stopped playing football and rugby, but I looked for something else. And my other half is part of a running club, so I would go along to the odd run, and I hated it. I thought, what's the point in running? I'm got a ball in my hand or at my feet. I can't, I can't do this anymore. But I found triathlon, and that's simply because I went and watched the first Ironman in Wales.
Amazing.
So 2011, I went there. We went to support a mate. He couldn't swim, so he learned to swim that year. And anyway, long story short, I loved it and I was hooked. And it's very similar to you. I thought, anyone who's doing this at the moment is a legend, because you're potentially not exercising, you're potentially racing for up to 17 hours. Some people even longer. They miss the cut off at the end, but they keep going, and hats off to all of them. And I have this mindset that those people who are working, and this could be a marathon or this could be an Ironman or whatever distance, the people who finish top of their field and they're finishing it first, hats off to them, brilliant. They've worked to the top of their ability for that period of time to finish the race. So if you take an Ironman, for example, the top guys in Wales anyway are doing it in around 9 hours, ish. And hats off to them. They've worked hard for 9 hours, full stop. But that guy who comes in, or that girl who comes in 16 hours and 59 minutes, I've got a lot more, not necessarily respect, but, hats off to them, because they've worked to the top of their ability.
Completely.
But for double the time, maybe, or what have you.
Yeah, I massively agree, and it's that kind of journey that is so inspiring about so many triathletes and things like that, and it's something that I kind of loved. I came from a sport where there was absolutely the perfect, you could be this perfect body type and you got everything for free, basically. Like, I could walk into auditions and they'd be like, yeah, we like her, and I'd be like, hang on, wait for me to dance. But it was just because I was, the perfect shape for that performance or whatever it was. And I love the fact that in triathlon there is no, like, everyone's story is different, every course is different, the fact that you're racing, I mean, I do half Ironman. Hats off to people that complete the full Ironman, and I will do one day, I'm sure, but anything can happen over those 17 hours. What other sports you get where you're racing that long? Obviously ultras, a different kettle of fish, but like, so much can happen, and there's no perfect triathlete. You can be large, you can be small, you can be from a running background, you can be from a dancing background, you can be from no sport background. No one knows who's going to win, and that doesn't just go for the amateurs, and it goes to the pros as well. There's a whole range of people doing different things, and also the journey on that day. And like I said, like, who knows what's going to happen. I attended the 70.3 World Champs last year.
Nice.
Amazing experience. And there was a girl I'd been very fortunate to spend some time out of Nice before that. And there was a girl that I'd been clocking up and down the climb when we'd been training, and she was a machine. Like this, she was an amateur, but like amazing. And on race day, I overtook her quite early on the climb, and I just couldn't work out what was wrong. Like I'd been literally going, oh my God, that girl is just amazing, every time I'd sort of seen her when we were both training and things. And on race day, she got very unwell. And then further on in the race, someone had a crash, and like 3 of us got stopped behind the crash and things like that. And, over that time frame, so much of it is like that mental game, that mental perseverance.
Yeah, 100%
and
it's
for people, whatever stage of the race, whether you're at the 9-hour time frame, that bug could be the 15-hour, all those people that are going, will I make the cutoff? Everyone has their own challenges.
Yep.
And on a good day, it will be great, and it'll be people will come through. On bad days for people, no one knows what's going to happen, and that is so exciting. It's not like you've got a 90-minute side and it's pretty predictable and you either get a few goals or you won't. It's like, yeah, it's just this whole other thing. And so many times it's the people that can get their head down that can like complete it, and whatever's inspired that. And you listen to these awesome stories, of people overcoming adversity or family difficulties, or they've had lost loved ones or whatever, and that has driven them. And when you stand there on that course, you see that and you feel that. I'm sure that's what you experience at Ironman Wales, is like this massive passion, or these just incredible like feats of human.
Well, I interviewed you may have come across him, but Triathlon Taran. Do you know? So I interviewed her on the podcast either last week or the week before, and we were having a bit of a chat about Ironman Wales. And I don't know if you've ever been there as well, but I always say this: that race day, and that race anyway is special to me because it's in Wales. I'm Welsh anyway. Blah blah blah. But that moment when you're on the beach, they've just played the Welsh national anthem. They're playing AC/DC across the tannoy, right? And you got people in floods of tears for various reasons, and it's
Probably
also
me.
because
Oh God, what am I?
They are.
Sign up to this race.
It's because of the journey to get there. They've gone through countless hours of training, and again, I always say this to people because they say to me, "Oh, I could never do an Ironman. How are you ever that fit? And the day itself is the easy part. It's the months and months of training that has got you to that point, because on the day, as long as your training has gone well, or reasonably well, you should be fit enough to go around. So on the day itself, it's all about this. It's all about your head. It's all about getting round.
It's
that drive to do it. And funnily, you should say about different body types. My first ever Ironman was 2014. It was notoriously known as a bad swim that particular day, because the sea was so choppy that you would hit the top of the wave, you would go to stroke, and there'd be nothing there because the waves were so big. Anyway, we came out of the water, and you run up to transition, and it's about 1 kilometre from the beach, from where you swim. So you're running in your wetsuit, and anyway, you that particular day you get to triathlon transition, and there's people everywhere. They're lying on the floor, they're being sick. It was like a war zone because that swim was so hard. And we had people dropping out at that point, and I was trying to say to a couple of the guys who were changing next to me, and they said, that's me done, I can't go on. It's like the hardest part is done. You will never experience a swim like that again. The weather's good, let's just get on your bike and get going. And again, but it's that mental attitude that you've gone past one bit, it's hard, you've achieved it, let's move on. And funny enough, again, sorry, going on to body types, I came off the end of the bike on Ironman Wales, that first one, and as I was coming into Tenby, and it's a nice about 3 mile ride into the town. It's downhill, and at this point your legs are shot because it's like it's so bumpy on the course. And I got flanked by 2 really large guys, so I'd caught them up at this point, and I just couldn't get my head around how these guys they were really big lads. You're talking ex-rugby players, front row, really big lads. I just couldn't work out how they were in front of me, and it bugged me a little bit. And on reflection after the race, I was like, why is it bugged me? Because I've been in the pool with people who are quite large, and they're like fish. They fly through the water. And I'm quite slight, and I'm probably similar to yourself as well. I'm quite slight. I'm decent on the bike. I'm good at climbing. I'm maybe not the greatest from a power.
Descending, no chance.
But again, you've got different people, haven't you? Different sizes, and so it that's what I love about the sport. It doesn't matter if you are a 16, 17, 18 stone person, or you are,
it's on the same account, a teeny tiny person that you never think is going to cope with the Ironman, bike or the swim or whatever. It's amazing. And old and young. I mean, you look at Craig Alexander, who's, racing still at 47, and it's like, and the lady that won the world champs, I think, was in the 45 to 50 age group. Like, it's just, you don't get that in other sports, especially not in ballet. Like, at 19 years old going professional, I was like grandma.
Yeah.
And so this is, it's just, I can't tell people enough, like even my family, oh no, I could never do it. I'm like, actually, you definitely so could. And what
I've
you
got
say about mindset,
yeah,
100%.
yeah. I've got a mate who at the time when I did my last Ironman 4 years ago, he was 54, 55 maybe, and he beat me. He beat my time,
Yeah.
and so hats off. And
Well, I
again,
hope I'm one of them. I hope I'm still racing into my 70s
well,
maybe.
I tell you what, I would love to be. You see the video of the Iron Nun and things, and she's like in her 80s, and she was doing Ironman. Oh, well, I absolutely would love to be that person. And I know I'm never going to be the fastest in my age group where I am at the moment. But if I get to 80, maybe I'm the only one that
Yeah,
can do
exactly.
it
Win
a
by
particular
default.
day.
There's a couple of those in world champs as well. Yeah, absolutely. I
I
like.
want a podium one day, and I don't care if I'm 85 doing it. So yeah. Anyway, I wanted to ask the ballerina dancing element of your background. Do you think you took skills from that into triathlon? And the reason I ask that is I've got a very good friend who was a ballerina,
Oh, really?
and she is a fantastic runner.
Ah,
I
so
don't think she
yes.
knows it, but she's a fantastic runner.
So there's a couple of things. 100% number one, the mindset, the ability, like the amount of performances I've done with 3 broken toes and the ability to shut out the pain, the show must go on. I think a lot of us can relate to that in an Ironman. So my kind of pain threshold and determination is like, I'm going to finish this with a smile, no matter what, absolutely stays there. And also the discipline from my training. So training since I was so young and things like that, I just can't imagine what it would be like not to have a full life with with the schedule of training in. So that discipline and the kind of mindset, 100% take that from ballet. And I think that's a lot of transferable skills. Also just being at quite a high level and managing the pressure can sort of, I put a lot of pressure on myself in kind of triathlon and things like that as well. And just, yeah, lots of crossover there. But in terms of the physical side, that's an interesting one. So I have a load of really strange strengths and weaknesses. I have very, very good strength for my body weight. My own body weight strength is super high. So my power to weight ratio and hills and the turbo and like my ability to do press ups and like all of these silly things that you'd actually look at me and be like, really, she could do that, is really, really good because I've been able to do that. Running, I'm well known as Bambi within my club because I literally bound. And if anyone's ever seen
Yeah, my mate is
oh
exactly
my
the same.
God.
Yep, she glides along, she bounces,
I do. Oh my,
and the
oh my
rest of us
God.
pound the streets.
Yeah, literally. And it's like I did this one race. It was quite like a small race, and it was like this 5 lap circuit on a middle distance. And every lap, the commentator was like, "Oh, there's Jemima Cooper bounding along on her toes. She's still on her toes." And then like that, he's still looking springy. And I'm like, "Dude, this is just the way I run." But yeah. So in terms of like the run, that is like I've definitely got a spring in my step, and that does help. And in terms of like my climbing ability, just kind of the way I'm built, I suppose I'm a bit like a mountain goat. In terms of like upper body strength, all I did was have my arms out in one position. I have literally no upper body strength. Like I can bench press, no, leg press. I always get that wrong. Leg press is stupid. What I can bench press is pathetic. And I really struggled with the actual like strength element of my like upper body because I just never used it. But on the same account, I'm quite fortunate because I was trained from such a young age. My ballet teachers, would say you need to move your arm, slightly or describe it, and I would absolutely react to that instantly. I was trained to react to what I was told to do with my body and have that kind of kinesthetic awareness, like own body awareness. So in terms of like when I'm coached and things like that, so if my run coach, suggests I need to, change my form in a certain way, I can very quickly pick it up. And it's the same with the swim. So I was very fortunate to there's an amazing swim coach for anyone that is kind of struggling with a swim called, if you look it up on kind of Instagram or online, it's Swim for Try. And this guy, Dan Bullock, is an absolute he's just incredible. If he can make me swim faster, like,
Well, it's interesting. I want to do a podcast around swim analysis, so I don't know if he does that.
Oh, he would be the guy. He is 100%, like, literally anything. I can't recommend him enough. But going to see him for a few sessions, I was very responsive to what he did, and I was able to practice that. So in terms of that, it's probably more of the mindset thing that was helpful. I can calf raise for Britain as well, like so if anyone's got any competitions open for that. But yeah, this kind of, I have odd strengths and weaknesses. I had that kind of, I effectively base load endurance trained since I was 4, and we also had, so in dance it's like a lot of base load, lots of like own body conditioning, but then you have these spikes. I was a jumper, really. That was where my like where I was like best at, the type of dancing I was best at, and so we did have that kind of explosive stuff, so the kind of micro fast, which isn't very useful in a half Ironman, if I'm honest. But
the longer you go, the sort of least explosive power
threshold junkie.
With triathlon, then, do you think you have a weaker discipline out of the 3?
So yeah, it comes and goes, and like, I'm sure everyone gets this as well. Like, when the run's going really well, then the other things go bad, and that's kind of what I love, because it never gets boring. Yeah. Initially going in, because I'd just never done it, swim was absolutely my weakness. And I was very fortunate, actually. Before lockdown this year, my swim was getting really quite good, like very, very respectable. And I was able to develop it thanks to this swim coach, actually, for supporting me. Like with my technique and stuff, it was definitely improving, and that was balancing out. My like climbing and like power to weight on the bike is very, very good, but my body, like, I'm small, and I find holding that kind of power on the flat really hard. So if you give me a hill, I can be up it, straight away. When I get to the other side, I don't quite have the weight behind me to go fast, and nor do I have the fearlessness that you need, having grown up having to be wrapped in cotton wool as a dancer. But I mean, so it comes and goes. I'd say, like, my run still has a long way to, I have a long way to go in everything, but I have strengths and weaknesses on the bike, and then swimming is kind of the one that I've had to learn a lot. And
you've mentioned already that you obviously been competing in half Ironman 70.3s. Is that your preferred distance? Do you have another distance which you prefer?
I love 70.3. I absolutely love 70.3. Like, I wish, in a sense, I think Olympic would like potentially even suit me better, but I'm never going to be able to swim fast enough to do the kind of level that I'd like to go, because I would I mean, I literally started off from a nobody, and I don't want to sound like anything different, because I literally started from the ground 3.5 years ago. But I do have quite big kind of aspirations to up my game in the sport, and I just cannot compete with those kind of elites out there that have been swimming since I was dancing. If you weren't born a swimmer, you're never going to get to those paces. But I love half Ironman, because it gives you that absolute like kill yourself aspect of the long course distance. But actually now there's a lot of like shorter distance athletes coming in. It's fast and fierce, and it's like just short enough for it to be a real like intense quick day out, but not so long that but still like kind of, but long enough to not make it quite as bad as Olympic.
And I'm the same. I love 70.3. I probably don't do enough of them, only because I like going long as well. Only because from my point of view, there's perhaps a little bit less pressure. And I don't compete at the level you do. So there's a little bit less pressure for me to go fast, because on an Ironman, anything can go wrong, which can affect your day. And it's the same with a half Ironman. You can have an upset stomach, you can have a mechanical, you can have a bad swim, you can twist a knee.
Also things that go on in front of you on course. Like, I think that is actually like, it's not only your race, but then so much can happen.
Yeah, really good example. I did long course weekend last year in Wales, and I had a horrendous bike. And when I say I did the long course weekend, I only did the bike anyway. But there's a crash right in front of me, and I was like Lewis Hamilton going through the chicane to avoid it, and I thought, should I stop? And then there was loads of supporters around it that was able to help him, and yeah, that's fine. And then
It throws you off, doesn't it?
oh no, massively. And what threw me off even more, um, towards the end of the bike, I saw someone collapsed, and well, they had to give him CPR, and I was like, it's not, well, it's definitely not his day, but it's not my day either. It affected me quite badly.
Yeah, I've had that situation before as well.
Yeah,
But it's
I just thought, I just want to go home now. I've had enough. I've had a couple of scares on the bike while I was out there. I then saw this guy, and I just thought, but I was quick though the next day to say, right, it was a bad day in the office. Don't let it affect you. It's a sport that you love. Yes, you've seen something horrendous, but that's not a regular thing in the sport. And and I was of the mindset, and I sort of come from a health background as well, that it's not the sport that's put that person on the floor there. It's possibly an underlying medical condition or a number of other factors, and I think that a lot of people will see those things in the news, like, oh, this person has died during the London Marathon, or a person has happened, and I'm of the mindset that you can't go with that fear anymore of
yeah, well, that's the
something
same
you
with
love.
everything. Like, I'm from all the things I've experienced in my kind of life, and having experienced really quite severe illness and all the rest of it, it's like you only live once, and like if it's going to happen to us all one day, but like make the absolute most out of it. And like there are a lot of bad things, and you take a risk every time. You take a risk every time you get in your car, every time you get on your bike, and all of these things. But for those moments that make you feel like so amazingly alive in those races, or I'm sure, like I often find like at the awards ceremony or whatever, when there's all that music and all these people that have just experienced this amazing, and there's just this vibe that is just this energy, and it's just, it feels amazing. Whatever happens in your race just doesn't matter, because it's just that kind of community and vibe. And
I love it, right? The moment you cross a line, right, and it doesn't matter if it's a sprint triathlon or if it's an Ironman, and I've previously done ultra marathons and things like that. The moment you cross that line, it's amazing feeling. It doesn't matter that 30 yards up the road you were on your backside, and you
it's
couldn't
amazing how you can get new energy. Like I remember races where I've like, when you go into that kind of hyperventilation state and you're like, oh god, I can't do this, and then you see that person, or you see your friend cheering you on, or you see that person with to me, often when I see the kind of para athletes as well, I'm like, geez, if they can do it, I can do it. And lots of other things, and it just gives you that lust for life. And
I'm quite I'm not, even though I do this podcast, right, I'm quite an introvert, and I don't my other half were telling me she doesn't get two peeps out of me at times. She can't make a conversation, and I'm the grumpiest runner in the world, right? I will do a run and people try to take photos of me, and I always come out like proper sad sack face and grumpy as hell. Anyway, but the first time I did my first Ironman, I came up the red carpet in Tenby in South Wales, and oh my god, I was high-fiving people, I had a Welsh flag out, I was dancing. Oh, it was brilliant.
One of the things I'm super duper firm about is like, whatever happens in the day, I'm such a firm believer in like chivalry on race course, and respecting the race and respecting your competitors, because for all these reasons, like, you've no idea what that person is going through. You don't know what's actually gone on to get them there. You don't know what they've done in training, or their reason for completing this race. And I am such a I don't know, sort of on my moral high horse, but I'm massive, like, I do my absolute best to be a good competitor. So I have this thing that, whatever happens in the day, I will shake the hands of the first, second and third in my category or whatever. And that's just something that I always do. And on the run course, I love getting to run for lots of reasons. I run better off the bike. If I was to do a flat race, I'd actually do it probably slower than off the bike. But I love the run because it's my favorite discipline. And of course, it's the last one, so that's when you can run home and things. But I always feel like I always make a big effort to like give people like thumbs up or high five or whatever on the run course, and it like gives me energy as well. I think being that positive, like, because you're knackered by that point, so being that positive also like you know, fake it till you make it or whatever. But for like 11 or 12k, I'll be like thumbs upping everyone. They might go, well done, you know, you might get something like that. You know, by like 12 to 17, it's like I have to really like you to be able to get a thumbs up, or I have to know you. And then by like 18 to 21, I'm an absolute cow. I'm like, just move, like just go. And it's so, and like if I ever race against anyone that's listening, like I do apologize in advance, and when I get past that finish line, I will then, you know, return to nice happy me. But like at this, it's normally like I just need sugar.
I'll take it one step further, and I'm very much of the same mindset, but also thrown in all the marshals and all the people that come to support. And again, it doesn't matter what race. I love saying to a marshal, "Thank you very much," or even if they like right turn, I'm like, "Thank you." And then as soon as I get on the run, I start being grumpy. But it's funny. I had a complete role reversal when I did again Ironman Wales, but 2016, and I was doing the run and I felt quite good, and I think it's because my training had gone well. The day itself was good. The swim was pancake flat. The bike, there was just the nice weather. You know, it wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. So when it came to the run, I actually had a little bit of energy left. So on Tenby, I don't know if you've ever gone down for Ironman Wales, but it's in sleepy seaside town, but you do 4 laps of 6 miles for the run, so you end up seeing the same people 4 times. And what's funny about it is you run past pubs and people, you see them on the first part of the run, and maybe they, you know, got a pint in their hand and they're all civilized and they're all saying well done, keep going. And you get the second lap and they're a little bit more drunk, and then you get to the third, and then by the 4th lap you're absolutely knackered. You've been on, you know, from my point of view, I've been running for 11 and a half hours, 12 hours, and at this point I got no energy, but the atmosphere just starts ramping up and ramping up, and the pros are finished and they're all gone, but everyone who's in the pub now, their mates are starting to come through and they're starting to finish, and it's brilliant. And I remember running past the rugby club, and there was a bit of a gap between me and the people in front, and they cheered the people in front, and then they went quiet, and I really needed a pickup and things like that. So I was like, Tenby Rugby Club, come on! And all of a sudden they just erupted, and it was brilliant. And you know, like I said,
oh my gosh, you're actually making me like, I'm getting all like warm and fuzzy inside.
You should
like, who else just wants that feeling back?
And this year has been absolutely shit with COVID and things. And,
well done.
You know,
that's straight to the point.
And people have been, you know, they're disappointed from their training point of view because they can't do it. You know, we still can't swim technically in Wales.
Not even open water.
Not even open water, really. Technically, you're not supposed to. You know, and technically, you're not supposed to go more than 5 miles on your bike. Everyone's flunked in that, but it doesn't really matter. But anyway, it's been a crap year, and I just know those first few races that when we get back, and as long as we're allowed to get them back to a level that we've done previously, are going to be amazing. You know, and that time when you get to go across the line, whether you're a pro, whether you're right at the very back of the field, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be an absolutely amazing.
I know, just like kind of pick up on that. Like, I think it's I think it's such an important thing. Like, lots of people will have just, you know, had these big races planned for this year, and you know, they're one-off Ironman, and I really do feel for like everyone that's like this, and you know, it must be really, really gutting. But whatever happens, whether you choose or whether you have the funds or whatever it is to re-enter and actually do that thing, what you must remember is like even if you didn't actually get to that race day, like we said, actually the race day is the pinnacle, and actually you could have raced, but you could have got a puncture at mile 2 and not, or your bike might have broken, you might have been out of the race, or you might have had something terrible happen in front of you and get I don't know, something happened, you have to drop out or whatever. So never underestimate what you do day to day. It's not that 1% of your year when it's actually Ironman day that is made your achievement up till that date is incredible, and what you will have learned about yourself, and those dark training sessions that we've all been in, and those horrible wet cold runs and rides and things that we've pushed through. Like, you will have learned stuff about yourself that will have made you made you learn things, made you a better person in many ways. You will have probably met incredible people. That's what I love.
I was just about to say that. The people that you meet along the way are brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Regardless all around the world as well.
Regardless if they're pros, somewhere in the middle, or the back of the field athletes, it doesn't matter. They're all brilliant, and they're all willing to pass on information.
And help each other. Like, that's such a big thing. Like, I'm so gutted with the silly rule change about not being able to help people on course or whatever. I'm like, that's what it's all about. That's another story for another time. But
and it's the one thing that I have an issue with as well, because a couple of times I've gone down to watch Ironman, and someone's had a puncture in front of me, and they, for whatever reason, maybe they can't get their wheel off or what have you, and you just bust in to help them, and just because I've seen it with people that their mind goes, and their mind just freezes, and they don't know what to do, and they've probably changed the tire a million times before, but in that moment in time, they're fretting and they're rushing. Again, I always come back to Ironman Wales because it's what I know really well. There's a really
good promo for it. Ironman paying you.
No, they should. There's a part of the course called Heartbreak Hill, and it's a really short, sharp hill. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a killer. And the problem is, it's lined with supporters, and it's like a scene from the Tour de France. Yeah. So when you see someone climb, and you got people running by the side of them, and the guy there with the devil outfit in the Tour de France, it's a little bit like that. Anyway, I was supporting one year, and we were down on the hill, and it's a fantastic atmosphere. There's music playing, there's people cheering, and anyway, a guy right in front of us slipped his chain, and he's on this hill. He can't get going. He tried to reconnect it about 4 or 5 times, and in the end, me and another guy had to just step in and say, "Let us just chuck it on you." We put it on, we pushed him up the hill to get a bit of momentum, because otherwise he would have been pushing up it. And that's the one. There's a couple of little rules within triathlon. I do think let's make it a little bit less elite, and just the everyday athlete. That's fair, fair enough, because there's so many people come into the sport and they fret about things like drafting. And they're like, I'm really scared that I'm going to get disqualified for drafting. And my advice to all of them is, unless you're up near the front, you'll be fine. Because if someone thinks you were drafting, they will tell you, come back. But and I'm talking about the everyday athlete now, not the guys at the top. It's people fret too much, because in the sport there's so many rules and there's so many things to know. And then that can change also then by depending on what race you do, whether it's a drafting race, a non-drafting race, and so on and so forth. But anyway, we digress slightly there. I got a couple of last questions I want to ask you, if that's okay. You've come into the sport. You're relatively new in the sport. It's 3.5 years, did you say?
Yeah, pretty much.
So I'm hopeful that you can think back to when you first came in. If you could give a piece of advice or different bits of advice to anyone new coming to the sport, what would it be?
Okay, so there one thing I've definitely learned the hard way, and from a background where in dancing, if you can't do it, you just do it more, and you keep on adding practice of the same thing until you do get it right. In Ironman and in triathlon, that doesn't work, and there's such a misunderstanding of what you need to do to be pro. Yes, like these incredible superstar professional athletes, some weeks they do train 30 hours plus. They do have these mega 9-10 hour brick sessions off the back of a swim and all the rest of it. However, the majority of the time they don't, and they're not kind of people that are working at the same time. There is such a misconception that if you do 25 hours of training each week, you will get better and you will get faster. That's not the case. And I've tried it for myself, and overtraining is such a big risk for people. And one thing, I work really closely with a specialist triathlon dietitian, Claire Fudge, who runs this fourth discipline company, and she supported me hugely. And one thing she said to me, something that she'd been told by a coach actually, was the difference between a professional and an amateur is evident on a running track. When you go to the running track, you'll see the amateurs beasting themselves, looking exhausted, running round and round and round and round, trying to hit that target number. You'll see the pro come to the track, do 800 meters, realize it's not their day, and walk the rest of the session. And it's having that discipline and that ability to rest when your body needs it, and to actually go quality over quantity, that absolutely differentiates the field. Even if you are doing Ironman, you've only got to race for those, that one day. And actually, so yeah, great if you've done 40 hours training, 1 week, but if you're not able to keep that consistent, or if you're able to smash yourself on a Wednesday Zwift race, but for the rest of the week you're broken and every other session is rubbish. Or the other thing is, everyone's got super busy lives. Like I work full time and all the rest of it as well. And it's like, some days when work has been absolutely manic, and I've been up till midnight and up again at 6 working, and I'm trying to thrash myself on a session, it's not going to work. And mental fatigue is just as important as physical fatigue in the long run. So yeah, 100%. Make sure you're just realistic, and I'd also really recommend getting some advice from people that know, because there's a heck of a lot of information on there online, and that is not qualified, and it doesn't have a lot behind it. And we've got to remember here that we're not playing with an easy race. Putting your body through potentially 17 hours of exercise is not something that you could just buy off the shelf in Tesco's. And I think that's really important. If you don't know, ask people, and there are lots of free resources as well, but from qualified kind of sources. But go to the right places. Don't just take the influencer or whatever that appears to be doing 50 hours of training and try to replicate that. It's not the way to go.
It's my one of my biggest bits of advice that I like to give is, yes, you can buy a training plan off the shelf. Yes, you can buy the Don Fink book, which gets you through X training plan. But regardless of what distance you do, you really need someone, if you want to take it to the next level, to support you. And you need someone to say to you, stop training as hard. Incorporate some low intensity training. Have a rest day.
Balance life as well. So actually, one of the biggest things my coach does for me, I'm a pretty competent athlete. I've had some good experiences in the sport, and then I've had obviously a pretty high level of sport before. I'm not a complete, although I'm a complete novice in triathlon, I do get sport as a concept, but what I really struggle with is balancing all of my life commitments with training and how to fit that in. And actually, my coach a lot of the time is just that person to kind of be that ear to, or to help me figure out how I'm gonna work my week or things like that. And there's so much more to it than whether you hit this pace or that pace on your bike session.
And also, I say this to people all the time: how often are you training where you're replicating race pace? Because it should be very little. You should, or you got people who are going out and say they're doing a middle distance triathlon, and they're regularly running a half marathon at race pace, and multiple times a week. And
there's phases. I think phases are really important as well.
Exactly.
Gotta remember, you can't be at 300% every day of the year. That's why, even the pros, they come off Kona and they're they're not at race pace for a long time after.
No,
And
no.
yeah,
And it's giving yourself that time to recover, not just physically but also mentally. You know, the sport does take a lot out of you, and it's that
and your family
recognition.
time as well, like, and like social life and all the other things, all the things that make you an all-rounded human.
Yeah, well, yeah, you got to have a life outside of triathlon as well, which sometimes is harder said than done, sort of thing. Anyway, let's wrap it up there. Before we go, any mentions, any shout outs you want to say?
Yeah, that would be great. Like, I'm very lucky, and I really believe, and I think it's kind of come through, that triathlon is a individual sport, but in so many ways it's not. And I'm so grateful for lots of people that have kind of been on my journey. And I'm very fortunate to be supported by some kind of amazing people, amazing companies, and all these partnerships are very kind of they've grown out of me either like being finding, you know, different products really kind of vital in my training, or when it's kind of people like the swim coach and Swim for Tri and Fourth Discipline, also that like people that have really supported me. But I'm very lucky to work very closely with a Norwegian clothing company called Trimtex, and now I have tried literally every pair of cycling shorts that is on the market, and it wasn't until I found this company that I actually found peace with my cycling shorts. So that was like, I'm so excited to be kind of partners with them this year. And also I think someone that will be good to hear for people doing Ironman is Runderwear, who do the most amazing undies, but just literally you have to check it out and try it for yourself, because I'm sure many of you experience these awkward training sessions that haven't gone so well. And then I'm also very lucky, my nutrition sponsor is Energy Snacks, so they support me fueling my training and racing, and then sort of I'm lucky to link with a physio as well, active therapy clinic in Cirencester, who keeps me on the straight and narrow, and Jack Woolhouse, who's my strength coach in Birmingham, and then also just finally a couple of other supporters. I work closely with Heartgreaves, which I do some sort of charity support for them. They have an incredible charity supporting a school in Kenya, and they have kind of linked with me, and I help.
Oh no!
Out my bit of do good there, but yeah. So and there's others that I haven't sort of mentioned as well, and
well, pass on the links to me. I'll make sure that they're in the description of the podcast, so then people can have a look at their own time as well. But yeah, that would be absolutely great.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have a really nice conversation with you.
Yeah.
And no doubt, if you don't mind, I'd love to have you back on in the future. Maybe we can think of it.
I'd love that, and I'm sure there's lots of people also that I can that I'm sure would make a great other interviews as well, and I'd love to share you.
Yeah, no, I'd love it. I love doing this. It's an opportunity to speak about something I'm passionate about, and also to meet really nice people along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, long live triathlon, and
well, hopefully,
I really hope,
otherwise I'll have to stop the podcast, and I don't.
That'll be, oh man, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
No worries. Anyway, thank you very much. You're an absolute star. Cheers.